I'm going to be reading from Zero Day, chapter 39. Addie tried to keep her breathing quiet. The hallways were dark, the rest of the family sound asleep. She walked awkwardly, feet still sore from a night in high heels, and crept past her sister's suite. Something clattered inside. A light flicked on, sending a shaft of light under the closed door that cut across Addie's slippers like a knife. She stopped, pressed her back to the wall, and waited. After a moment, the light went back off, and Addie quickly made her way to the back staircase and took the steps two at a time. When she got to the game room, he was already there, leaning against the pool table with a red pool cue in his hand. "Lilla," he said with a smile. His real smile, the one that felt like it was just for her. It was somehow both reassuring and disconcerting to see him, now that they were both no longer playing their roles. Lilla. Little one in Swedish. After only a couple of weeks of not hearing it, the nickname already sounded strange in Addie's ears. She folded her arms across her chest, and the pajamas she wore suddenly felt too thin, the chilly air blowing right through them. "Father," she said, "it's good to see you." "It's good to see you too, dear." He folded her into a hug, and she allowed herself to sink into his warmth for a moment before letting go. He handed her the cue. "Care for a game?" Addie nodded. She wasn't exactly in the mood, but she'd learned long ago it was never a wise idea to tell Carl Erlander no. "Great." Carl racked the balls. "You break," he said. Addie steadied her hand. It was hard to keep the pool cue from vibrating. She loved her father, but sometimes he scared her. There was something cold and calculating in his blue eyes that could chill Addie to the core. Sometimes she wondered how Carl and her mother had ever gotten together in the first place. Liz might be brilliant, but she was Carl's exact opposite when it came to the courage of her convictions, and Addie knew Carl's love for his wife was all-consuming. But maybe, like Father had always said, he and Liz Webster had just happened to collide at a time when they both needed something only the other could give. And while he'd regretted the affair, he didn't regret what had come from it. Addie. Addie's only wish was that her mother had been brave enough to tell her the truth. Addie leaned over the table, stick nestled between her fingers, and hit the white cue ball. The colored balls scattered, and the red 3-ball fell into a side pocket. "Nice," Carl said. "I see you haven't lost your touch." "Thanks," Addie said, feeling pleased despite her nerves. She leaned in for another shot. Carl rubbed chalk on the end of his cue stick and blew the fine powder away. "So tell me then, what happened to you tonight?" Addie straightened and looked at Carl. "What do you mean?" she said. "I think you know what I mean." Carl took a step closer. "You lost your cool. You should know better. After everything I've taught you, you can't go around insulting people, drawing attention to yourself. You'll make people suspicious." Addie shrugged. "What?" "I was just tired, and my feet hurt. People would get suspicious if I was calm all the time. I'm traumatized, remember?" She returned his cold smile, daring him to question her further. After a moment, she turned back around and aimed at the white cue ball again. But this time, her shaking fingers slipped. The white ball skidded sideways, barely nipping the blue. Carl grabbed her stick and held it tightly. Addie stood and faced him. She had to bite her bottom lip and keep it from trembling. "The world is a threatening place, little one. The things I teach you here may seem harsh, but they're to keep you safe out there." Addie shivered, thinking back. "Look, Lilla," Carl said, his voice dangerously soft, "I know this is stressful, but I don't think I need to remind you what's at stake, do I? We're almost there. You need to stay focused." "Yes, Father," Addie said. She hesitated, trying to form the words to ask about what the president had told her earlier, but her voice caught in her throat. "Good," Carl said. It's just easy to get lulled into this lifestyle." He waved his cue stick around the room. "You start to believe you're untouchable, like the president. But the same isn't true for the rest of the world, for people who don't have your level of protection, people like Mikey." Carl took his shot, knocking 2 striped balls into the pocket. His next shot missed. "Mikey," Addie asked, "how is he?" She pulled back her cue and sank the 1, the 2, and the 5 in rapid succession. "He's doing well," Carl answered. Sends his regards. He misses you." "I miss him too," Addie said. "Mikey." Her half-brother and only friend these last 8 years. The boy that she had let hide under her bed when Father was angry. The boy she'd tried to protect the only way she knew how, by always thinking one step ahead. The boy she'd laughed with over silly jokes, who'd been her partner in late-night cookie-stealing missions when Father was asleep. Good, Carl said. Good? Yes, good, Carl repeated. It's important you don't forget your family or why you're here. I haven't forgotten anything, she said. She leaned over and tapped the cue ball with her stick, knocking the 4 ball into the corner pocket. The 6 and 7 followed. She wasn't going to let her father rattle her again. She was going to win this game. I'm glad to hear that, Carl said. Sometimes we can play a part so well we forget which side we're on. I know which side I'm on, Addie snapped. 8 ball, left corner pocket. She knocked the 8 ball in. How is the progress with she? Carl said. I'm still searching for it, Addie said, but I will have it. She added quickly, by the end of the week, I promise. It's just been a little more difficult than I expected. Her voice wobbled. I know you can do it, Carl said, and gently touched her arm. Something else bothering you? Addie set her cue stick across the felt of the table. Yes. They say they actually found David and Helene. I don't understand. I know, Carl said. The FBI worked faster than I expected. There's nothing to worry about, though. What do you mean? Addie said, her voice betraying her again with its quiver. Just trust me, Carl said. I've taken care of things. How? It's probably better that you don't know, Carl said. Sometimes too much knowledge is a dangerous thing. Addie was well aware of that fact. A noise came from somewhere outside the room. Addie had to steady her legs, keep herself from running. We've closed down the chat room, Carl continued, concerned that there may have been a breach. Carl watched Addie, as if gauging her reaction. Oh? She said as nonchalantly as possible, legs still shaking. I've set up a burn chat account instead. He reached into his pocket and handed Addie a small piece of paper. Contact me through this as soon as you've found she. Okay, Addie said. And have you forgotten the reason for this reunion? Carl asked. Addie flushed as Carl pulled something else from his pocket, a digital camera, what she would have recognized in Virginia if she hadn't missed the handoff. He gave it to Addie as well. For prom, you know what to do. Take pictures? Addie said, raising an eyebrow. Carl didn't laugh. It's a diversion, he said. The device inside will cause a small explosion, but it won't be lethal. It will just appear that way, like the one in the Reagan building. We'll extract you right before it goes off, and Addie nodded, her lips pressed together. She didn't need him to say the words. She knew what was supposed to happen. I better get back to my room now, Addie said, finding it difficult to talk. I don't need anybody to get up and notice I'm gone. Very good, Carl said. But as Addie began to walk away, he caught her by the arm. Just one more thing, little one, he said. The boy that you were with in the green room? Darrow? Addie said, heartbeat accelerating. Yes, Darrow, Carl said. I suggest you keep your distance. I know he seems nice, but he's an ambitious young man. Don't let yourself be a means to an end. That won't be a problem, Addie said as she slipped from Carl's grasp. She headed for the door. I wish you could have known her, Lilla, Carl said. Addie slowed, turning back to Carl. Her heart ached at the haunting look in his eyes. So do I, Father. Nothing can undo the past, little one. All we can do is learn from it. His gaze turned hard. I know you won't let her down. And that is the end of chapter 39. I'm going to call it part 1, which we just realized that Addie is really Carl's daughter. Carl's her father. Apparently he had an affair with Addie's mother. And so that is kind of a big part that we just learned. So we're going to see what happens here in part 2 of chapter 39.